All right, buckle up, folks. Today on the Mysteria Archive, we're delving into one of the weirdest, most controversial historical theories out there, the phantom time hypothesis. Get ready for a wild ride. Picture this. What if I told you that a huge chunk of human history, like 300 years of it, never actually happened? Yep, that's right. I'm talking about the idea that the early Middle Ages from around 614 to 911 AD are completely fake. Poof, gone. This mind-bending theory was first proposed in the 1990s by a German historian named Herbert Illig. According to Illig, a group of historical heavyweights, including the Holy Roman Emperor Otto III, Pope Sylvester II, and the Byzantine Emperor Constantine VII, orchestrated a colossal historical cover-up. But why? To manipulate the calendar and create the illusion that they were living in the year 1000, a number loaded with symbolic significance. Apparently, 1000 AD was the year to be alive, and they wanted to throw the biggest party since the dawn of time. So, how did they pull it off? By altering documents, rewriting history, and, get this, adding phantom years to the timeline. The kicker? Illig claims this explains why the Middle Ages feel so empty. No major advancements, no significant cultural shifts, just a whole lot of castles and knights milling about. But wait, there's more. Illig argues that the architectural and archaeological evidence from this period is mysteriously scarce. He even claims that Charlemagne, the guy we all learned about in school, might just be medieval fan fiction. All right, hold up. 300 years of history disappearing? That's like someone telling you the 1800s never happened. No Napoleon, no Beethoven, no iconic sideburns. Now imagine the uproar today. People would lose their minds if YouTube was down for 3 minutes, let alone missing centuries. And Charlemagne being fake? Come on, that guy's immortalised in countless statues and coins. If he didn't exist, someone went full Banksy back in the day, scattering fake Charlemagne merchandise all over Europe. But hey, I get it. The Middle Ages were kind of a snooze fest. Maybe Illig was just bored and decided to spice things up. The case for phantom time. All right, let's give Illig the benefit of the doubt for a moment. His arguments rest on 3 key points: calendar discrepancies, architectural evidence, and historical inconsistencies. First, the calendar issue. Illig claims that when Pope Gregory XIII introduced the Gregorian calendar in 1582, it was meant to correct leap year discrepancies. Illig's conclusion? Someone fudged the timeline. Next up is the architecture, or more accurately, the lack of it. Illig points out that there's scant surviving construction from these so-called missing years. Sure, there are a few churches and castles, but not nearly as many as you'd expect from 3 centuries of human civilization. And what does exist? It seems way too advanced for its time, like the Aachen Cathedral, which Illig posits was built much later than historians claim. Finally, there's the historical record. Illig argues that the events of the early Middle Ages feel off. For example, the Byzantine Empire appears to stagnate for centuries, and Europe's population barely grows. It's as if humanity just hit the pause button for a few hundred years. So, let me get this straight. Humanity took a 300-year nap and no one noticed. Now, I've had lazy Sundays, but this is next-level snoozing. And the calendar issue? I can barely remember what time of day it is half the time, and now we're questioning the entire concept of years. Also, the missing architecture argument. And seriously, have you seen how fast a Starbucks can pop up these days? Now, if medieval architects were anything like modern-day developers, they probably slapped together a few cathedrals and called it a day. And as for the historical stagnation, maybe everyone was too busy avoiding the plague or inventing cheese. How would they pull it off? Now, if the phantom time hypothesis were true, how would these medieval masterminds actually make it happen? Rewriting history is no small feat. First, they'd need to fake an enormous amount of documentation: laws, treaties, royal decrees, religious texts, you name it. They couldn't just conjure these documents out of thin air. They'd have to create believable forgeries that fit seamlessly into the existing timeline. Then there's the archaeology. Would they need to plant fake artifacts, forge ancient coins, build churches and castles retroactively to fill in gaps in the architectural record? And what about the astronomers of the time? Would they need to manipulate celestial records, ensuring that past observations of eclipses and planetary movements aligned with their revised timeline? That's a tall order for anyone, let alone a medieval emperor and a pope. But proponents of the theory argue that if anyone had the power to pull it off, it would be these guys. Emperors and popes wielded enormous influence, and most people at the time weren't exactly fact-checking their calendars. So let me get this straight. These guys are supposedly orchestrating a historical cover-up so elaborate it would make Hollywood heist movies look lazy. I don't know, man. We're talking about the Middle Ages here. They didn't even have photocopiers, let alone Photoshop. And can we talk about the sheer effort by faking all those documents, planting artifacts and convincing everyone to play along? I can barely get a group chat to agree on where to have dinner. Also, who benefits from this? The Pope gets to say he's living in the year 1000. Cool. Meanwhile, everyone else is like, sure, buddy, I'm still farming turnips. Doesn't exactly scream master plan, does it? Alternative theories about the Middle Ages. Even if the phantom time hypothesis doesn't hold up, it does raise interesting questions. Why do the Middle Ages seem so strange to us? Some historians suggest that it's less about missing time and more about missing context. The so-called Dark Ages weren't as dark as we think. They just weren't documented as extensively as other periods. Writing and education were concentrated in monasteries, and most people were too busy surviving to leave behind detailed records. Others argue that our perception of the Middle Ages has been warped by later historians. Renaissance scholars coined the term Middle Ages to describe what they saw as an unremarkable gap between the glory of Rome and the rebirth of classical culture. In reality, the Middle Ages were bursting with innovation, from the invention of the mechanical clock to the spread of universities. So, maybe the Middle Ages weren't missing. They were just having a bit of a PR problem. It's like the middle child of history. Nobody pays attention, but they're actually doing cool stuff in the background. And calling them the Dark Ages, that's a little harsh, don't you think? Sure, they didn't have YouTube, but they certainly gave us cathedrals, chivalry, and plague doctors. Okay, maybe it wasn't all great. The counter-arguments. Now, before you start tearing pages out of your history books, let's consider what skeptics have to say. Spoiler alert, not everyone's buying into the phantom time hypothesis. Historians point out that there's plenty of evidence from the supposed missing years. Coins, manuscripts, and other artifacts have been found that date back to this period. And let's not forget the astronomical records. Medieval scholars documented eclipses and planetary movements, and modern scientists have confirmed their accuracy. If 300 years were missing, those celestial events wouldn't line up. Then there's a problem of global history. While Illig focuses on Europe, other parts of the world like China and the Islamic caliphates have detailed records from the same time. Unless there was some kind of global conspiracy or fake history, it's hard to explain how everyone just magically agreed to invent the same phantom years. And as for the calendar discrepancy, historians argue that this is simply a misunderstanding of how the Julian and Gregorian calendars work. No conspiracy needed, just a lot of math. Okay, I'll admit, the skeptics have a good point here. I mean, you've got medieval monks chilling in monasteries documenting every little thing. Brother Gregory sneezed today, praise be. And we're supposed to believe that they just skipped 300 years. It's not likely. And also the idea of a global conspiracy. We can't even agree on how to pronounce GIF. How are we going to coordinate a worldwide history hoax? And don't even get me started on the historical accuracy. My history teacher would roll in their grave. Maybe Illig just really liked the idea of a mysterious plot twist in a history book. The logistics of the supposed cover-up. All right, let's delve deeper into how these so-called masterminds would have pulled off their grand scheme. If you're trying to erase 300 years of history, it's not just a quick, oops, we skipped a few pages kind of thing. We're talking about secret meetings with the Holy Roman Emperor, the Pope, and the Byzantine Emperor, plotting to make the year 1000 look like a big deal. And to pull this off, they'd need a whole team of scribes, architects, monks, and probably a few pranksters. Can you imagine them saying, okay, we need to fake a few major battles, create some shiny cathedrals, and make sure everyone is totally cool with just skipping over 3 centuries? I mean, how would they even pull that off? You'd need a whole medieval version of a secret project team with 0 slip-ups. And don't even get me started on how they'd fake big stone buildings like cathedrals. What do they have, a team of medieval time travelers with Photoshop? This cover-up would require so much planning, it's almost impressive. I mean, coordinating this would be harder than planning a wedding. Imagine medieval nobles with their rivalries trying to keep a secret. Hey, Count Siegfried, did you hear we've decided to erase 300 years of history? Oh, you didn't? Well, just don't mention it at the next feast, okay? And let's talk about the sheer volume of paperwork. A cover-up of this magnitude would leave behind a mountain of evidence. Written accounts, public records, maybe even a few letters home saying, guess what? We just invented a whole new century. And how do you explain that to your neighbours? Sorry, I was busy time travelling. What's for dinner? why people believe it. So, why does the phantom time hypothesis still have fans? Well, for starters, it's a great story. Who doesn't love the idea of a secret plot to rewrite history? It's got everything: power-hungry emperors, shadowy conspiracies, and the ultimate plot twist. But there's also a deeper reason. The Middle Ages are often called the Dark Ages because so much about them feels murky. Records are spotty, and the period doesn't seem to fit neatly into the broader arc of history. For some people, the phantom time hypothesis is an elegant solution to those gaps. And let's be honest, questioning history is fun. It makes you feel like a detective unraveling the secrets of the past. Even if the theory doesn't hold up to scrutiny, it's a reminder that history is never as simple as it seems. Who doesn't love a good conspiracy theory? It's like the ultimate plot twist. The phantom time hypothesis is like a modern-day national treasure. History mixed with intrigue, just begging for someone to dig deeper. But let's be real, while it's a fun theory, it doesn't exactly hold up to scrutiny. Still, it's a reminder that history is full of surprises, and sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. Phantom time in pop culture. The idea of phantom time has popped up in pop culture too. From sci-fi stories about alternate timelines to fantasy novels that question the nature of reality, this theory taps into something universal. Even TV shows like Doctor Who and Dark explore the idea of rewritten timelines and hidden histories. And who could forget the Assassin's Creed games, which play fast and loose with history in the best possible way? The phantom time hypothesis might not be real, but it's definitely inspiring. All right, if there's one thing the phantom time hypothesis is good for, it's Netflix scripts. Somebody call Hollywood. We've got a medieval Matrix on our hands. But hey, if the theory gets people interested in history, that's a win, even if it's history with a side of wild conspiracy. But what if it's true? Okay, let's play devil's advocate for a second. What if the phantom time hypothesis is true? If 300 years of history never happened, that would mean we've been living in the year 1725 this whole time. Forget Y2K, our calendars are off by centuries. It would also mean re-evaluating everything we think we know about the Middle Ages. The cultural and technological gaps would make sense because they never actually happened. And let's not forget the existential crisis. If we can't trust history, what else can't we trust? Science, maps, the expiration date on my milk. But here's the thing. Even if the theory isn't true, it forces us to ask some big questions. How do we know what we know? How reliable are our sources? And how much of history is shaped by the people who write it? All right, so if we're really in 1725, I've got some bad news. No Wi-Fi, no Netflix, no pineapple on pizza. Actually, that would be a win. But seriously, the phantom time hypothesis is a good reminder that history isn't set in stone. It's like a giant game of telephone passed down through the ages. Sometimes things get lost in translation or added or completely made up. But hey, that's what makes history so fascinating. It's one big mystery we're all trying to solve. The truth about phantom time. So, what's the verdict? Did 300 years of history disappear? Well, most historians would say no. The evidence against the phantom time hypothesis is compelling to say the least. But it does serve as a fascinating reminder of how we view history and the stories we tell about our past. Who knows? Maybe there are other phantom times lurking in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. Or maybe history is just messy, beautiful, and ever-evolving tapestry of the human experience. Remember, history is weird and people will believe just about anything if it's got a good conspiracy behind it. So, if you ever meet a monk named Herbert Illig, maybe ask him what really happened. All right, what do you think? Do you believe in the phantom time hypothesis, or do you think it's just a total hoax? Let me know in the comments below. And this channel is all about our curiosity, be it the supernatural, ancient civilizations, or aliens. Okay, until next time, stay curious.